Picture yourself hiking through a remote, overgrown valley, far from any modern road or town. The air is still, the only sound the rustle of leaves underfoot, when suddenly you round a bend and come face to face with something astonishing. A monumental stone archway, draped in vines, with water quietly flowing through its ancient channel. This isn't a scene from a fantasy novel. This is the reality for explorers who discover abandoned aqueducts that still function perfectly, centuries after their builders vanished from history. These silent stone sentinels stand as testaments to human ingenuity, defying time, neglect, and the elements to continue their original purpose against all odds. What if I told you that these forgotten structures hold the key to solving some of our most pressing modern challenges? In an era where infrastructure crumbles after decades and climate change threatens our water systems, these ancient aqueducts have endured for millennia. They weren't just built to last, they were built to outlast civilizations themselves. From the deserts of Peru to the heart of ancient Rome, engineers of the past mastered principles of design that we're only beginning to fully appreciate today. Their secrets aren't locked in complex technology, but in brilliant simplicity, understanding gravity, working with nature rather than against it, and using materials that age with grace rather than decay. In this video, we'll embark on an extraordinary journey across continents and centuries to explore 24 of these miraculous aqueducts that still carry water today. We'll uncover how their timeless designs function after 1,000 years of abandonment, and what they reveal about creating structures that truly stand the test of time. You'll discover how ancient builders achieved what modern engineers struggle with, creating systems that require no maintenance, no energy, and no modern materials, yet continue to serve their purpose generation after generation. This isn't just about historical curiosity, it's about unlocking wisdom that could revolutionize how we build our future. So join me as we decode the principles of time-proof design and discover how the flowing waters of the past can guide us toward a more sustainable and resilient tomorrow. To truly grasp the brilliance of these surviving aqueducts, we need to journey back to the very beginning, to understand the powerful forces that first compelled humanity to move mountains of earth and stone to control water itself. This story starts not with a single empire, but with a universal human need that emerged independently across the globe. As early agricultural societies transitioned from small villages into sprawling cities, they faced an existential challenge: how to provide a consistent, clean water supply for thousands of people concentrated in one place. Local wells and rivers were no longer sufficient, especially during droughts or seasonal changes. This fundamental pressure gave birth to one of humanity's first great infrastructure projects, the aqueduct. While we often associate these structures most closely with the Romans, who perfected the form, the concept arose in numerous ancient cultures, each developing solutions uniquely adapted to their environment and resources. The Persians constructed vast underground networks called qanats, which tapped into groundwater in the mountains and transported it for miles through gently sloping tunnels to the arid plains below, minimizing evaporation. In the Americas, the Maya built elaborate pressurized systems using limestone cement, while the Inca engineered precise stone channels to irrigate their spectacular mountain terraces. What's fascinating is that these diverse cultures, completely isolated from one another, all arrived at the same core realization: that by understanding and harnessing the unwavering force of gravity, they could make water flow precisely where they needed it to go. For these civilizations, an aqueduct was far more than a utilitarian pipeline. It was a profound symbol of power, order, and technological supremacy. A functioning aqueduct broadcasting fresh water into the heart of a city was the ultimate status symbol, a declaration that a society possessed the wealth, organizational skill, and engineering prowess to bend nature itself to its will. It enabled not just survival, but luxury public baths, ornate fountains, and sophisticated sewer systems that became hallmarks of advanced urban life. The ability to provide this most essential resource reliably was what separated an empire from a mere settlement, fueling growth, health, and cultural flourishing on an unprecedented scale. Yet, the very grandeur of these systems also made them vulnerable. The extensive stonework and precise gradients that ensured their longevity required immense resources to build and, crucially, to maintain. As history's tides turned, empires collapsed due to invasion or internal strife, trade routes shifted, or climates changed, the organized societal structures needed to upkeep these vast networks often disintegrated. Many aqueducts were abandoned not because they failed, but because the complex civilization that built them could no longer muster the collective effort to clear silt from channels or repair a breached arch. They were conquered not by engineering flaws but by historical circumstance. This makes the ones that survived all the more remarkable. They withstood not just the physical wear of centuries, but the silent abandonment of the people they were built to serve. Their enduring functionality is a silent rebuke to the notion that advanced technology must be complex or high maintenance. It is this incredible resilience, baked into their original design, that we are only now coming to fully appreciate as we seek to build a future that can last. The secrets to their survival are hidden in plain sight, written in stone and water, waiting for us to rediscover them. So what exactly allows a structure to stand for 2,000 years while our modern constructions sometimes crumble after just a few decades? The answer lies in a powerful concept we can call timeproof design. This isn't just about building something to be strong, it's about engineering for eternity. Timeproof design is a holistic philosophy that ensures a structure remains not only standing but fully functional, safe, and relevant across centuries, even as the world around it changes dramatically. It anticipates not just the wear of weather, but the slow creep of material decay, the sudden violence of earthquakes, and even the complete collapse of the society that built it. These structures are built with a different kind of intention, a profound respect for the relentless passage of time. This approach weaves together several critical principles into a single, resilient whole. It begins with an almost intuitive understanding of natural physics, primarily harnessing the constant, predictable pull of gravity to move water without any need for pumps or external power. The flow is everything. The gradient must be precise, steep enough to keep the water moving and prevent stagnation, yet gentle enough to avoid erosion that would scour the channel walls and undermine the foundation over hundreds of years. This is paired with a masterful knowledge of hydrology, siting these structures to tap into reliable water sources and route them along stable terrain. Perhaps most importantly, timeproof design is defined by a radical simplicity and a deep connection to local resources. Builders selected materials not for their cutting-edge novelty, but for their proven durability and availability. They used local stone that could be quarried nearby, understanding how it would weather and age in that specific climate. They designed with passive systems that required no complex moving parts, nothing to break down or replace. The genius is in the fact that maintenance wasn't an afterthought. It was often designed out of the equation entirely. The structure, once completed, could theoretically function forever on its own, a closed loop of stone and water and gravity. This stands in stark contrast to so much of our modern infrastructure, which is often designed with a vastly different set of priorities. We frequently build for cost-effectiveness and speed, using materials with known lifespans that will require constant monitoring, upgrades, and eventual replacement. Our systems are active, complex, and energy-dependent. There's a term for this: planned obsolescence. While not always malicious, it reflects a disposable mindset where structures are seen as temporary assets rather than permanent legacies. Timeproof design flips this script entirely. It asks not how can we build this quickly and cheaply, but how can we build this so that it will still be serving people 1,000 years from now. Ultimately, this concept transcends mere engineering. It's a philosophical statement about our relationship with the future. It's about creating a legacy that outlives language, culture, and even memory itself. It's a form of generosity across generations, a gift from the past that continues to give. The aqueducts we are about to explore are the ultimate embodiment of this idea. They are not cold, dead ruins. They are living proof that the most advanced technology is often the one that endures in silence, serving its purpose long after its creators are gone. As we journey from France to Peru, keep these principles in mind: the embrace of natural forces, the wisdom of local materials, and the elegance of passive design, and you will start to see the hidden blueprint for eternity written into their stones. Our journey to uncover these secrets begins in the sun-drenched landscape of southern France, where one of the most iconic and visually breathtaking examples of time-proof design has stood for nearly 2,000 years. The Pont du Gard is far more than a beautiful relic. It is a masterclass in Roman engineering that continues to whisper its lessons to anyone willing to listen. Built in the 1st century AD, its primary purpose was deceptively simple: to form a critical link in a 31-mile aqueduct system, carrying fresh water from the Jura spring all the way to the bustling Roman city of Nimes. But the method of its construction reveals an ambition that was anything but simple. What immediately strikes any visitor is its sheer scale and elegant proportion. Soaring nearly 160 feet high, that's as tall as a 16-story building, it strides across the Garden River with an air of effortless grace. It is composed of 3 majestic tiers of arches, each level serving a distinct structural purpose. The lower tier acts as a sturdy bridge, the middle supports the upper water channel, and the top tier is the conduit itself, all built from a beautiful, honey-colored local limestone. The most astonishing fact, and the key to its longevity, is that this entire colossal structure was assembled without a single drop of mortar. Roman engineers achieved this through a technique known as opus quadratum, where each stone was painstakingly cut and shaped to lock perfectly with its neighbors using nothing but gravity and friction. This wasn't just construction, it was a giant, incredibly precise 3-dimensional stone puzzle. This intentional lack of mortar is a brilliant feature, not an oversight. It granted the aqueduct a crucial characteristic: flexibility. During floods, the entire structure could shift and settle minutely without cracking, as the stones would simply adjust their positions slightly before settling back into place once the waters receded. This design has allowed it to withstand countless flash floods on the river below, events that would have shattered a more rigid, mortared construction. Furthermore, the arches themselves are not perfectly flat. They possess a slight curvature. This subtle design genius distributes the immense weight of the stone and the flowing water above evenly down through the piers and into the bedrock, making it remarkably resistant to the seismic tremors that occasionally ripple through the region. But the engineering marvels aren't just in the grand arches. Look closer at the spec sheet and you find another secret to its enduring function: the gradient. The entire 31-mile aqueduct descends only 56 feet from its source to its destination. That is an almost unimaginably shallow drop of just 1 foot for every 3,000 feet of length. This incredibly precise slope was calculated to create a water flow that was both constant and gentle. It was fast enough to prevent silt and debris from settling and clogging the channel, yet slow enough to avoid the destructive, erosive force of a torrential rush that would have scoured away the stone and undermined the foundation over centuries. For hundreds of years after the fall of the Roman Empire, the Pont du Gard was abandoned, its purpose forgotten by locals who simply saw it as a miraculous, if inexplicable, bridge. It was this very period of neglect that became its ultimate test, and it passed with honors. While the sophisticated society that maintained it faded into history, the aqueduct's passive, self-sufficient design required no upkeep to remain standing. It was rediscovered and restored not out of necessity, but out of reverence for its beauty and durability. Today, it doesn't carry drinking water for a city, but it does carry something perhaps even more valuable, an undeniable proof that the most enduring human creations are those that work in harmony with the immutable laws of nature. Leaving the serene French countryside behind, our exploration of timeless waterworks now pulls us into the very heart of a bustling Spanish city, where an aqueduct doesn't just stand on the outskirts, it soars through the urban center as a living, breathing part of the community. The Segovia Aqueduct is arguably one of the most dramatic and audacious structures the Roman Empire ever produced, a breathtaking feat of engineering that seems to defy logic as it marches across the city's main plaza. Imagine a two-tiered giant assembled from 20,000 granite blocks, not held together by mortar or metal, but standing solely through the perfect, precise balance of stone upon stone. This is architecture as a high-wire act, a monument to the power of precision and a stunning example of form meeting function in the most enduring way possible. Its construction around the 1st or 2nd century AD was a direct response to a critical need, transporting water from the distant Frio River over 10 miles away to the Roman military garrison and growing civilian settlement atop a rocky outcrop. The final 800 meters of this journey presented the greatest challenge, requiring the aqueduct to cross a deep valley right before entering the city. Roman engineers solved this not with a tunnel or a detour, but with a head-on monumental solution, a soaring arcade that would become the city's defining feature for millennia. The choice of material was crucial. The local granite is incredibly hard and resistant to weathering, but it's also notoriously difficult to shape. Each block had to be painstakingly dressed by hand to interlock with its neighbors with hair's breadth accuracy. This was a project that demanded immense patience and skill, a long-term investment in permanence that modern construction schedules would scarcely allow. The true secret to this aqueduct's incredible resilience, allowing it to remain in continuous use for nearly 1,800 years, lies in its brilliant passive design. Without mortar, the entire structure possesses a slight flexibility. During an earthquake, the stones can shift minutely, absorbing and dissipating the energy before settling back into their original positions once the tremors pass. A rigid, mortared structure would have cracked and collapsed under such stress, but this one simply shrugs it off. Furthermore, the foundation was carefully tailored to the terrain. The pillars are not all the same height. They were precisely calculated to follow the natural slope of the valley, ensuring each arch distributes its load directly downward into the solid bedrock below. This prevents any uneven settling that could warp and topple the entire arcade over centuries. This design philosophy of minimalist, material-aware construction meant that the aqueduct required remarkably little maintenance. It simply worked decade after decade, century after century, faithfully delivering water until the mid-19th century. Even today, while it no longer carries the city's drinking supply, its structure is so perfectly intact that it could theoretically be put back into service with minimal effort. It has survived not just earthquakes but wars, urban expansion, and the pollution of the modern age. It stands as a functional monument, a daily reminder to the people of Segovia that the most advanced solution is not always the most complex one. Sometimes durability is found in simplicity, in understanding the inherent strengths of your materials, and in designing with a profound respect for the forces of nature. This masterpiece of minimalist engineering perfectly sets the stage for our next destination, where we'll see how a different empire, facing its own unique challenges, adopted and adapted these Roman principles to create something equally enduring. Crossing from the European heartlands into the vibrant crossroads of continents, we find an aqueduct that embodies a different kind of endurance, not just against the elements, but against the sweeping tides of history itself. The Aqueduct of Valens doesn't simply stand in Istanbul. It is woven into the very fabric of the city, a stone thread connecting its ancient past to its pulsing modern present. Originally commissioned by the Roman Emperor Valens in the 4th century and completed in the year 378, this magnificent two-story arcade was the critical backbone of one of the ancient world's most ambitious water projects. It formed the middle section of a vast system that channeled water from the forested hills of Thrace, over 120 kilometers away, into the heart of the imperial capital, Constantinople. Its purpose was nothing less than to sustain a megalopolis, a city that saw itself as the new Rome and needed the water to match its grandeur. What makes the Valens Aqueduct a masterclass in time-proof design isn't just its robust Roman construction, but its incredible historical adaptability. The original Roman engineers employed a brilliantly pragmatic mix of materials: massive, precisely cut limestone blocks for the sturdy piers and lower arches, combined with lighter, more flexible brickwork for the upper tiers. This combination was a stroke of genius. The heavy limestone provided immense compressive strength to bear the loads, while the brick arches offered a degree of flexibility that helped the structure absorb the relentless seismic shocks that have always plagued the region. This inherent resilience gave it the strength to survive its first major test, the brutal sacking of Constantinople by the Knights of the Fourth Crusade in 1204, an event that shattered the city but left its vital water artery largely intact. The aqueduct's true secret to millennial longevity, however, lies in its continuous value to every succeeding civilization. The Byzantines, inheriting the Roman Empire's eastern mantle, recognized this stone lifeline as utterly indispensable. They meticulously maintained it, repairing damage and clearing its channels, understanding that the survival of their magnificent city, with its enormous population, its lavish public baths, and its sophisticated palace complexes depended entirely on this steady flow of water. When the Ottomans conquered the city in 1453, they didn't see an obsolete relic, they saw a perfectly functional and brilliant piece of infrastructure. They too became its custodians, integrating it into their own sophisticated network of Sebil's public water fountains and mosques, ensuring its survival for centuries more. The aqueduct was so effective that it remained a key part of the city's water supply right up into the 19th century. This layered history of use and reuse reveals a profound principle of time-proof design that goes beyond mere materials and geometry. The Valens Aqueduct possessed what we might call cultural durability. Its value was so obvious, its function so essential, that it transcended the rise and fall of empires, religions, and languages. It wasn't just a Roman aqueduct, it was a Byzantine aqueduct and then an Ottoman aqueduct. Each culture invested in its preservation because it served their needs perfectly, a testament to the foresight of its original builders who created something so fundamentally useful that it could not be allowed to fail. This ability to serve multiple masters across millennia is the highest compliment that can be paid to an engineering work. It reminds us that the most time-proof structures are those that earn their keep, embedding themselves so deeply into the human landscape that they become irreplaceable. Leaving the urban grandeur of Istanbul behind, we now travel to the rugged coastline of northeastern Spain, where another Roman marvel stands in defiant solitude, a testament to the raw power of simplicity and strategic placement. The Les Ferrers Aqueduct, often shroudedly in local legend as the Devil's Bridge, cuts a formidable figure against the Spanish sky. Unlike the aqueducts integrated into city centers, this one feels like a piece of wilderness itself, a stark and powerful reminder of Rome's ability to impose order on even the most challenging landscapes. Built in the 1st century BC to quench the thirst of the important port city of Tarraco, its purpose was singular and vital: to transport water from the Francole River across a deep, wide valley directly into the heart of the Roman provincial capital. What immediately captures your attention is its sheer, muscular presence. 2 tiers of majestic, unadorned arches rise to a height of 27 meters, stretching over 217 meters in length. Every stone in this colossal structure was quarried from the very surrounding hills, a choice that speaks volumes about Roman engineering wisdom. Using local stone meant the materials were already acclimated to the specific environmental conditions, the humidity, the temperature fluctuations, the very composition of the air. There's no mortar here either. The entire aqueduct is a gravity-locked puzzle of immense limestone blocks, each one painstakingly shaped to bear the load of its neighbors. This construction method granted it a crucial flexibility, allowing it to sway and settle minutely during earth tremors or seasonal ground shifts without suffering catastrophic failure. The location of the aqueduct was not chosen by accident. It was a masterstroke of geological insight. The Romans didn't just look at the valley and decide to bridge it. They carefully selected the narrowest and most stable point in the entire ravine. The foundations for the massive pillars were not merely dug, they were anchored directly onto the living bedrock that lines the valley floor. This strategic placement ensured that the immense weight of the stone and the water flowing above it was transferred directly into the most stable part of the earth, bypassing weaker, unstable topsoil that could have subsided over the centuries. This intimate understanding of the local geology is a primary reason it has withstood not just the test of time, but the violence of war, including damage during the Peninsular War, and centuries of complete neglect after it was finally abandoned in the 18th century. For hundreds of years after it stopped serving its original purpose, the Les Ferrers Aqueduct was left to the elements, yet it never truly fell. It simply stood, a silent and enduring monument to its own impeccable design. Its survival through this long period of abandonment is its most impressive feat. Without any maintenance, its passive, self-supporting structure continued to function exactly as intended, resisting the relentless forces of wind, water, and vegetation that worked to dismantle lesser constructions. The local legend that gave it the name Devil's Bridge, a folktale common across Europe suggesting that such a perfect structure could only have been built by supernatural forces, is perhaps the highest compliment a piece of engineering can receive. It was so perfectly executed that it seemed beyond human capability. This magnificent structure drives home a critical lesson that modern engineers are urgently revisiting: the unparalleled importance of site selection and material provenance. The Romans didn't fight their environment, they partnered with it. They used what was locally available and built where the land was strongest, creating a structure that was inherently sustainable and resilient. In an age where we often prioritize speed and cost over longevity, the Laissez-Faire's Aqueduct stands as a silent challenge, proving that true durability is born from a deep respect for the local landscape and a commitment to using materials that are not just strong but right for the place. This principle of building in harmony with the immediate environment, so brilliantly demonstrated here in Spain, finds perhaps its most extraordinary expression in a completely different part of the world, where an ancient culture developed a hidden, underground solution to one of the planet's most arid climates. From the monumental stone arches of Rome, we now journey to the starkly beautiful and arid plains of southern Peru, where an entirely different philosophy of time-proof design emerges, one that is hidden from view, yet arguably even more brilliant. Here, the Nazca culture, famous for their enigmatic geoglyphs etched into the desert floor, faced an existential challenge far more pressing than creating art, surviving in one of the driest places on Earth. Their ingenious solution, developed around 1,500 years ago, was not to conquer the landscape with imposing structures, but to collaborate with it silently and secretly underground. They created the Puquios, a vast, decentralized network of subterranean aqueducts that represent a breathtakingly sophisticated understanding of hydrology and sustainability. Unlike the towering Roman aqueducts that marched across valleys, the Puquios are almost invisible. To the untrained eye, the desert surface is punctuated only by strange, spiraling stone ramps that look like ceremonial wells or entrances to another world. These are the ojos or eyes of the system, and they are the key to its enduring function. These spirals are not decorative, they are meticulously engineered for multiple critical purposes. First, they provide vital access for maintenance, allowing communities to descend and clear silt or debris from the tunnels below. Second, and most ingeniously, they act as natural ventilation shafts. As the wind blows across the desert, it funnels down these spirals, creating a constant airflow through the underground channels. This airflow serves two miracles. It cools the water, reducing evaporation in the brutal desert heat, and it maintains pressure within the system, helping to push the water along its journey. The construction itself is a masterwork of low-tech, high-intelligence design. The Nazca didn't have access to vast quarries or imperial wealth. Instead, they used what was available, river rocks and their own labor. They dug deep trenches down to the water table and then lined them with these stones to create stable, underground tunnels. The gradient was carefully calculated to use gravity to pull water from the aquifer in the foothills down to the lower valleys where their fields and settlements were located. This was a passive, energy-free system that required no pumps, no external power, and crucially, no expensive or complex materials that could degrade or corrode over time. The water flowed protected from the scorching sun, meaning nearly every precious drop reached its destination. This brings us to the most astonishing fact about the Puquios. They were abandoned for centuries after the decline of the Nazca culture, their builders and their original purpose fading into mystery. Yet when modern farmers rediscovered them, they found that many were still perfectly functional. The local community simply began using them again, and they continue to irrigate fields in the Nazca region to this day. Their resilience is phenomenal. Being underground, they are completely immune to the earthquakes that frequently shake Peru. The seismic waves pass harmlessly over them. They are protected from the destructive forces of wind and rain. Their modular design means that if one section collapses, it can be repaired without jeopardizing the entire network. A stark contrast to a massive above-ground aqueduct where a single breach could halt all water flow. The Puquios stand as a powerful testament to the idea that time-proof design isn't about monumental scale or imperial ambition. It's about humility, cleverness, and a profound respect for local conditions. The Nazca engineers looked at their harsh desert environment and didn't see an obstacle to be overcome with brute force. They saw a partner. They harnessed the wind for cooling, gravity for flow, and the earth itself for insulation and protection. They built a system that was maintainable by the community it served, not reliant on a distant, centralized authority. In doing so, they created a water infrastructure that has outlasted empires, a silent, sustainable, and utterly brilliant legacy that continues to give life to the desert more than a millennium after it was first conceived. Leaving the sun-baked deserts of Peru behind, we now return to the heart of the Roman Empire, but to a project of such staggering complexity and scale that it makes even the grandest arched aqueduct seem almost simple by comparison. Deep beneath the fertile landscape of southern Italy runs the Aqua Augusta, a hidden titan of hydraulic engineering. Also known as the Sereno Aqueduct after its source springs, this was not a single structure but an entire subterranean network, a sprawling web of tunnels and channels that stretched for over 140 kilometers, making it one of the longest and most sophisticated water systems the ancient world ever produced. Its ambition was breathtaking: to simultaneously supply no fewer than 8 major cities, including the bustling port of Naples, the naval base at Misenum, and the lavish resort town of Baiae, with a seemingly endless flow of fresh mountain water. Conceived during the reign of Emperor Augustus and completed around the year 20 BC, the Aqua Augusta was a masterpiece of systematic planning from its very inception. Unlike aqueducts that served a single destination, this was a multi-branching, integrated grid, a Roman precursor to a modern regional water utility. Its primary challenge was topographical. It had to navigate not just valleys but entire mountain ranges, vast volcanic fields, and unstable coastal plains. Roman engineers met this challenge with a dizzying array of solutions. For most of its length, the water flowed silently and invisibly through deeply buried, waterproof tunnels, safe from erosion and enemy attack. Where it encountered a deep gorge, a sturdy bridge was erected. When it met a steep hillside, it was channeled along a massive, concrete-reinforced embankment. And when a mountain stood squarely in its path, the Romans did the only thing they could. They tunneled straight through it, in sections so long that maintenance crews required ventilation shafts reaching all the way up to the surface. The secrets to the Augusta's incredible longevity, allowing parts of it to function for nearly 2,000 years, are found in the meticulous details of its construction and management. The gradient, as with all Roman aqueducts, was calculated with near supernatural precision, maintaining a constant, gentle flow that prevented destructive turbulence and sediment buildup. But the Augusta introduced another layer of innovation, its famous lead piping. While we rightly recognize the toxicity of lead today from a purely engineering perspective, it was a revolutionary material. Malleable and durable, it allowed the Romans to create watertight seals and navigate complex junctions with far greater efficiency than stone or ceramic. This drastically reduced leaks, a major source of water loss and structural erosion in other systems. Furthermore, the Augusta was perhaps the best documented aqueduct of its time. Roman texts like Frontinus's detailed records reveal a sophisticated culture of maintenance, with dedicated teams of aquarii, or water guardians, who continuously patrolled the underground channels, clearing blockages, repairing linings, and ensuring the system's purity. This combination of brilliant initial design and an unwavering commitment to upkeep is what truly sets the Augusta apart and defines a crucial, often overlooked aspect of time-proof design. It wasn't just built to be abandoned, it was built to be cared for. the Roman administration understood that even the most perfectly engineered system is vulnerable to entropy without constant, knowledgeable attention. This institutionalized maintenance regime transformed the aqueduct from a static monument into a living, breathing organism that could adapt and heal itself over centuries. Even after the fall of Rome, fragments of this knowledge persisted locally. Sections of the Augusta were repurposed during the Middle Ages and Renaissance, and astonishingly, some channels were still quietly delivering water to Italian farms well into the early 20th century. The Aqua Augusta teaches us a vital lesson that resonates powerfully in our modern world. We often see innovation and maintenance as opposites, the glamorous act of creation versus the humble chore of upkeep. The Augusta proves they are two sides of the same coin. The most groundbreaking innovation is useless if it cannot be sustained, and the most diligent maintenance cannot save a fundamentally flawed design. True timeproofing requires both, the visionary leap to imagine a system that can last for millennia, and the humble, daily discipline to keep it functioning. It's a philosophy that values the long-term stewardship of a resource as much as its initial acquisition. This intricate dance between creation and preservation, so perfectly executed beneath the hills of Italy, finds a fascinating echo across the Atlantic, where a different kind of visionary blended two distinct engineering worlds to create a monument of cross-cultural endurance. Our journey now takes a dramatic leap across the Atlantic and forward in time, to an era of immense cultural collision and fusion, where the principles of timeproof design were being rediscovered and reinvented in the most unexpected of ways. In the high plains of central Mexico, a remarkable structure stands not as a relic of a single empire, but as a beautiful hybrid, a testament to what can be achieved when two distinct engineering traditions merge into something entirely new and powerful. The Aqueduct of Padre Tembulk is a 16th-century miracle, a UNESCO World Heritage Site that defies easy categorization. It is neither purely Roman nor solely indigenous. It is a brilliant Creole invention, born from the vision of a Franciscan friar and the skilled hands of local Nahua communities who possessed a deep, ancient knowledge of their own land and materials. The story of its creation is as compelling as its structure. Friar Francisco de Tembulk arrived in the New World with the Spanish crown and the Catholic faith, but he also carried with him the architectural memory of the Roman aqueducts that had once served his homeland. Witnessing the water scarcity plaguing the towns of Otumba and Zempola, he was inspired to act, but he was wise enough to understand that European blueprints alone would not suffice in this new, volatile environment. Instead of imposing a foreign design, he embarked on a collaborative project of staggering ambition. For 17 years, from 1553 to 1570, he worked alongside indigenous master builders, stonemasons, and laborers, combining European architectural principles with Mesoamerican construction techniques that had been perfected over millennia. The result of this partnership is a breathtaking work of engineering art. Stretching for 48 kilometers, the system is a masterclass in adaptive design. Its most iconic feature, the main arcade at Tepeyahualco, soars to a height of nearly 40 meters, making it the tallest aqueduct bridge ever built in the Americas during its time. But its true genius is hidden in its construction details. Unlike the mortar-less Roman aqueducts, Tembulk's structure uses a lime mortar, but one prepared with a local formula that incorporated traditional binders, creating a blend with exceptional durability and a degree of flexibility. The arches themselves are not the massive, heavy structures of Roman Europe. They are elegantly proportioned and relatively lightweight, a design choice that significantly reduces the overall load on the foundation. This focus on weight distribution was a direct and brilliant response to a major local challenge: seismic activity. Mexico sits on a landscape crisscrossed with fault lines, and a rigid, heavy structure would have been shaken to pieces long ago. The aqueduct's lighter arches and more flexible foundations, however, allow it to absorb and dissipate the energy of earthquakes, swaying where a heavier structure would crack. This inherent resilience is a perfect fusion of European form and local necessity. The indigenous builders knew the land's temperament intimately, and their input ensured the design was not just transplanted, but truly rooted in its new home. Beyond its physical construction, the aqueduct of Padre Tembulk embodies another, equally important principle of timeproofing: community stewardship. This was not a project built by a distant emperor for his subjects. It was built by a community for itself. This fostered a powerful sense of local ownership and pride that translated into a centuries-long tradition of maintenance. Long after Friar Tembulk himself was gone, the people of the surrounding towns continued to care for the aqueduct, recognizing it as their lifeline. They cleared its channels, repaired minor damage, and protected it from vandalism. This communal guardianship is a vital, often invisible, component of its longevity. A structure can be perfectly designed, but if no one feels responsible for it, it will eventually succumb to neglect. The aqueduct's survival is a powerful reminder that the most durable infrastructure is often that which is most deeply loved by the people it serves. Traveling northeast from the vibrant fusion of Mexico, we arrive at a strategic port city where the waters of the Aegean Sea have witnessed the rise and fall of empires, and where an aqueduct stands as a physical timeline of this layered history. The Aqueduct of Kavala, often called the Camers, is not merely a Roman relic or an Ottoman addition. It is a palimpsest in stone, a structure whose very walls tell a story of continuous adaptation and reverence. Its initial construction is attributed to the Romans in the early 2nd century, part of their extensive efforts to supply the important city of Neapolis, later known as Kavala. But the breathtaking form we see today, with its soaring, multi-tiered arches marching dramatically over the old town, is largely the work of Ottoman Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, who in the 16th century ordered its comprehensive restoration and expansion. This wasn't a simple repair job. It was a complete reimagining and enhancement of the ancient framework, a testament to the structure's undiminished value a full 1400 years after its birth. The visual signature of the Kavala aqueduct is unmistakable and reveals the hands of its different builders. The lower sections, with their massive, sturdy blocks, speak of classic Roman pragmatism, strength and stability above all else. As your eye travels upward, the architecture shifts. The upper arches and the elegant vaulted conduits showcase the distinct, more ornate brickwork and pointed arches characteristic of Ottoman design. This isn't a clash of styles, but a harmonious fusion. The Ottomans didn't just copy the Roman plan, they studied it, understood its core principles, and then built upon it with their own advanced engineering knowledge. They used locally quarried white marble and granite, materials chosen not just for their beauty but for their proven resilience to the coastal salt air and the region's notorious seismic activity. This choice of material was a masterstroke, ensuring the new sections would age as gracefully as the old Roman foundations. This layered construction approach endowed the aqueduct with what we might call cumulative resilience. Each civilization that worked on it didn't just fix weaknesses, they added new layers of strength, creating a structure that was far more robust than the sum of its parts. The Romans provided the foundational genius of gravity flow and a route sited for optimal water collection. The Ottomans enhanced this with sophisticated masonry techniques that improved flexibility and earthquake resistance. For over 1,500 years, this collaboratively designed marvel served as the unwavering lifeline for Kavala, through Byzantine intrigues, Ottoman conquests, and the tumultuous birth of modern Greece. Its abandonment in the early 20th century came not from failure, but from progress, the arrival of modern piping systems that rendered its open channel obsolete. Yet, even in retirement, the aqueduct's time-proof nature shone through. It was never fully decommissioned in the spirit of its design. During severe droughts or periods of high demand in the modern era, city officials have occasionally reopened its channels, allowing the ancient waters to flow once more through the old stone conduit to supplement the municipal supply. This occasional reactivation is the ultimate proof of concept. It's not a museum piece turned on for a show. It's a piece of critical infrastructure that remains on standby, ready to serve its purpose at a moment's notice, a silent partner to the very modern systems that replaced it. It stands today not as a ruin, but as a beloved civic landmark, its arches illuminated at night, a symbol of the city's enduring identity and a physical bridge between its ancient past and its vibrant present. The story of the Kavala Aqueduct powerfully demonstrates that the most enduring structures are often those that are never truly finished, but are instead gifted with new life and new strength by each generation that recognizes their value. Our journey now takes us to the vibrant heart of Mexico, where an aqueduct stands not just as a feat of engineering, but as a breathtaking work of public art, a monument so beautiful it seems to transcend its practical purpose entirely. The Aqueduct of Quaritaro is a stunning ribbon of rose-colored stone that sweeps across the modern city, its 74 majestic arches marching in perfect harmony for over a kilometer. Unlike the austere, militaristic grandeur of Roman constructions, this is an aqueduct conceived in the spirit of the Baroque, an era that believed public infrastructure should uplift the soul as well as serve the body. Completed in 1738, it was born from a combination of desperation and devotion, a project initiated by a Spanish nobleman, Juan Antonio de Urrutia y Arana, after a severe drought threatened the burgeoning city. Yet its construction was fueled by more than just civic duty. Local legend tells of the Marquess's profound affection for a nun, a love he could never act upon, and how he channeled that passion into building this magnificent gift for her city, a story that forever entwines the structure with themes of unrequited love and civic generosity. The choice of material was both aesthetic and brilliantly pragmatic. The warm, pink Cantera sandstone was quarried locally, ensuring the structure was not only beautiful but also built from a material naturally acclimated to the region's climate. The most critical design decision, however, was once again the conscious rejection of mortar. Each massive block was meticulously hand-carved to fit with its neighbors using gravity and friction alone, a technique that granted the entire arcade a vital flexibility. When the ground shakes during the earthquakes common to this region, the entire structure can sway and settle minutely without fracturing, the stones simply adjusting their positions before locking back into place. This passive seismic resilience is further enhanced by the elegant distribution of the arches themselves. The spans are not all identical, their width and height vary subtly, a design that expertly distributes the immense weight and counters any potential harmonic vibrations that could amplify during a tremor and lead to catastrophic failure. While the aqueduct was officially retired from its role as the city's primary water source in the 1970s, to call it abandoned would be a profound misrepresentation. It has never been neglected. Instead, it has been seamlessly transitioned from a piece of vital infrastructure into the very symbol of Quaritaro itself, a beloved icon that is woven into the city's identity. It is constantly maintained and preserved, not out of necessity, but out of deep communal pride and affection. This emotional connection is a powerful, often overlooked component of its time-proof design. The people of Quaritaro see the aqueduct not as a relic but as a member of the community. This profound sense of ownership ensures that even its occasional, symbolic functions, like channeling water for irrigating the lush parks that now line its path, are treated with reverence. It is a living monument, a piece of the city's heart that still beats. The enduring legacy of the Quaritaro Aqueduct teaches us a subtle but profound lesson about the nature of longevity. It demonstrates that the most time-proof structures are those that successfully marry the practical with the beautiful, the functional with the symbolic. Its survival is not just a result of superb engineering and deep foundations, but also of its undeniable aesthetic grandeur, which inspired generations to care for it long after its original utility had faded. It proves that when we build with beauty and civic pride, we create an emotional imperative for preservation that can be just as powerful as any engineering principle. This graceful transition from a working aqueduct to a cherished civic heirloom offers a powerful model for how we might view our own modern infrastructure, not as disposable assets, but as potential heirlooms designed to be both useful and beloved for centuries to come. Leaving the vibrant hues of Mexico behind, our path now leads us to the stunning Adriatic coast of Croatia, to a structure born not just from necessity, but from the very specific and powerful ego of a Roman emperor in retirement. The aqueduct of Derkletion is unique among the marvels we've explored. It was not built to serve a city in the traditional sense, but to supply the personal palace fortress of the Emperor Derkletion, who chose the Bay of Split for his spectacular retirement home in the early 4th century. This was no mere country villa. It was a massive, walled complex designed to function as a self-sufficient miniature Rome, complete with temples, military barracks, and luxurious baths. And for such a grand vision, only the most reliable and pristine water supply would suffice, leading to the creation of an aqueduct that would become a model of hydraulic precision. The challenge was significant. The nearest suitable spring, the Jadro River, was 9 kilometers away, and the terrain between it and the palace was anything but flat. Roman engineers employed their full repertoire of techniques to solve this puzzle. For long, stable stretches, they constructed deep underground channels, protecting the water from evaporation and contamination while maintaining a steady temperature. But where the land dipped into valleys, they raised the water on elegant, elevated arcades, bridges of stone that carried the precious flow across the obstacles. This combination of subterranean and elevated construction wasn't just for show. It was the most efficient way to maintain the one element that was absolutely critical to the aqueduct's enduring function, its unerringly constant gradient. This is where the true genius of the Derkletion aqueduct reveals itself, and it's a lesson in microscopic attention to detail. The entire 9-kilometer length descends at a rate of just a few centimeters every 100 meters. This almost imperceptible slope was calculated with breathtaking accuracy to create a flow of water that was both constant and gentle. It was fast enough to ensure a steady supply and to prevent debris from settling and eventually clogging the channel, a problem that would have doomed the system within years. Yet it was slow enough to eliminate any risk of turbulent, erosive force. The water didn't rush or gush, it glided. This hydraulic precision meant that over centuries of operation, the interior of the stone conduit experienced virtually no wear from the water itself. The aqueduct was not fighting the element it carried, it was guiding it with a master's gentle hand. The choice of material perfectly complemented this gentle engineering. The builders used massive blocks of local limestone, a material that is not only incredibly durable but also acquires a beautiful, protective patina as it ages, becoming more resistant to the elements. The stone channels were carefully sealed to minimize leakage, ensuring that every drop of water from the spring reached its destination at the palace baths, fountains, and cisterns. This combination of perfect gradient and robust material allowed the aqueduct to operate flawlessly for over 1,000 years, sustaining life within Derkletion's palace long after the empire itself had crumbled. It was a vital artery that continued to pulse even as the world around it transformed. Like so many of these ancient networks, it eventually fell into disuse and was partially dismantled, but its core design was too sound to be completely defeated. In a wonderful twist of history, the 19th century saw a major restoration project that brought the aqueduct back to life, not for an emperor, but for the public water supply of the growing city of Split. And in the most powerful testament to its time-proof design, sections of the original Roman channel are still in use today, not merely as a museum exhibit, but as a functional part of local agriculture, delivering fresh water from the same ancient spring to farms in the area. The aqueduct of Derkletion stands as a powerful, flowing argument that the most enduring force in engineering is not brute strength, but impeccable, unwavering precision. Venturing now into the heart of the Middle East, we discover an aqueduct system that represents perhaps the most ingenious and dramatic fusion of engineering and nature ever achieved. The ancient Nabatean city of Petra, famously hidden within the rose-red cliffs of southern Jordan, is often celebrated for its breathtaking tombs and temples carved directly into the rock face. But its true genius, the very reason this magnificent desert metropolis could exist at all, lies in a hidden, sophisticated water management system that turned a barren canyon into a thriving oasis. This was not a single aqueduct, but an entire hydraulic network masterfully woven into the natural landscape, a system so effective that it continues to perform its ancient duty during seasonal rains, long after the city itself was abandoned. The Nabateans faced a paradox. Their chosen location was a natural fortress, easily defensible, and positioned at the crossroads of major trade routes. But it was also an arid environment, subject to long periods of drought punctuated by sudden, violent flash floods that could tear through the narrow sick or canyon with devastating force. Their solution was not to fight these natural forces, but to harness them with breathtaking cleverness. They began by identifying and capturing every possible source of water. They built dams and diversion walls high in the surrounding hills to catch rainfall and channel it into a network of ceramic pipes and stone-cut channels. These conduits didn't march across the landscape on towering arches. Instead, they were carved directly into the cliff faces, routed along canyon walls, and even tunneled through solid rock, following the natural contours of the land with a respectful precision. This intimate integration with the topography is the first secret to its time-proof design. By carving channels directly into the native sandstone, the Nabateans eliminated the need for freestanding structures that could be undermined by erosion or toppled by earthquakes. The aqueduct became part of the mountain itself. Furthermore, their choice of materials was revolutionary. For pressurized sections, they used extensive terracotta piping. While we might think of clay as fragile, it is actually an exceptional material for this environment. It is non-corrosive, completely immune to the mineral-rich water that would rust metal or degrade modern concrete. These pipes were also modular and easy to replace. If a section cracked, it could be dug up and swapped out without disrupting the entire system. A design philosophy that prioritized long-term maintainability over initial construction speed. The system's most brilliant feature, however, was its dual purpose in flood control. The same dams and channels designed to capture and guide precious water were also engineered to mitigate the destructive power of flash floods. During a sudden downpour, the network would act like a vascular system, safely diverting the torrential overflow away from the city's center and its vulnerable structures. This ability to manage both scarcity and abundance demonstrates a holistic understanding of the desert environment that is only now being rediscovered by modern water managers. The Nabateans didn't just see water, they saw the entire hydrological cycle and built a system that could navigate every part of it. Abandoned for centuries after changes in trade routes and a devastating earthquake in the year 363, Petra was reclaimed by the desert. Yet the water system never fully died. During the rainy season, you can still witness water flowing through these ancient rock-cut channels, a ghost of the city's former life. This enduring functionality, despite a complete lack of maintenance for over a millennium, is the ultimate testament to its resilience. It stands as a powerful, silent lesson for our modern era, where many arid regions face crippling water scarcity. The Nabateans teach us that the solution isn't always in building bigger, more energy-intensive pumping stations or desalination plants. Sometimes the most sustainable path forward is to look back, to learn how ancient cultures worked with their environment, using passive, material-smart, and topography harnessing designs to create systems that not only last for millennia but continue to give life long after the civilization that built them has faded into history. While the Romans perfected the aqueduct form, their legacy did not end with their empire. In the misty, green hills of northwestern Spain, a different kind of endurance story was being written centuries later, proving that the principles of time-proof design could be reinvented for a new age. The Aqueduct of Santiago de Compostela stands not as a monument to imperial power, but to faith, community, and a pragmatic kind of ingenuity that prioritized function above all else. Built in the 12th century, its purpose was singular and profound: to provide a reliable water supply for one of Christendom's greatest pilgrimage destinations, a city suddenly swelling with thousands of travelers seeking spiritual solace. This was not an engineering project for glory. It was a vital necessity for survival and sanitation, born from the urgent needs of a bustling medieval world. The design of this aqueduct reflects its practical, down-to-earth origins. You won't find the soaring, multi-tiered grandeur of Segovia or the imperial scale of Rome here. Instead, the builders employed a simpler, more robust approach perfectly suited to the local resources and the challenging, hilly terrain. They used massive, rough-hewn granite blocks quarried from the surrounding Galician landscape, a material chosen for its incredible density and resistance to the region's persistent damp and weathering. The arches are stout and muscular, designed for load-bearing strength rather than aesthetic delicacy, and the overall structure follows the natural lie of the land with a respectful humility. This conscious decision to integrate with the topography rather than conquer it is a primary secret to its longevity. By routing the channel along stable, natural contours and avoiding geologically unstable areas, the medieval engineers prevented the kind of subsidence and landslides that could have undermined a more imposing structure. This pragmatic adaptation extended to the very philosophy of its construction. Without the vast resources of an empire, the builders focused on what they could achieve with local skill and materials. The masonry, while not as precisely fitted as Roman opus quadratum, is incredibly robust, relying on the sheer mass and weight of the granite to create stability. The channel itself was designed with a sufficient gradient to keep water flowing and prevent stagnation, but without the need for the microscopic precision of Roman aqueducts, making it easier to build and maintain with the technology of the time. It was a system built to be functional and repairable by the local community, not by a specialized corps of imperial engineers. This accessibility ensured its survival through the centuries. When a section was damaged, the knowledge and means to fix it were never lost. For hundreds of years, this unassuming aqueduct faithfully served the city and its endless stream of pilgrims, becoming an indispensable part of Santiago's heartbeat. It was only with the arrival of 20th-century modern plumbing that it was finally retired from its primary duty. Yet, true to its time-proof nature, retirement did not mean irrelevance. The structure remains remarkably structurally sound, its granite blocks barely weathered by the centuries of Atlantic winds and rain. Even today, it is occasionally called upon for auxiliary purposes, such as irrigating the lush gardens that now surround its path or serving as an emergency overflow channel during periods of unusually heavy rain. It has been seamlessly woven into the modern urban fabric, not as a ruin to be gawked at from a distance, but as a quiet, still useful relic of the city's long history. The enduring presence of the Santiago de Compostela aqueduct delivers a crucial lesson in the story of time-proof design. It demonstrates that longevity is not the exclusive domain of Golden Age empires with limitless resources. The medieval builders, working with a fraction of the knowledge and wealth of the Romans, achieved a similar result through intelligent adaptation, a deep understanding of their local environment, and a focus on pragmatic, community-oriented solutions. They took the Roman template and scaled it to their needs, creating a structure that was perfectly suited to its time and place. Its continued existence whispers that the most enduring designs are often the most humble, those that work with the landscape and are built to be cared for by the people who depend on them most. Now we journey to a land of dramatic boulders and lush tropical landscapes, where an empire's mastery over water turned a rugged terrain into a paradise of plenty. In the heart of southern India, the ruins of Hampi stretch across the countryside, the former glorious capital of the Vijayanagara Empire. While the grand temples and royal enclaves rightly draw awe, it is the empire's hidden hydraulic network that truly reveals their genius, a system so resilient that it springs back to life with every monsoon season, centuries after the empire itself vanished from history. Established in the 14th century, Vijayanagara was a city of immense wealth and power, but its location in a semi-arid region presented a formidable challenge. The empire's answer was an intricate, decentralized web of aqueducts, canals, and channels that did far more than just deliver water. They sculpted the entire landscape into a fertile, manageable, and breathtakingly beautiful engine of prosperity. Unlike the soaring arched aqueducts of Europe, the Vijayanagara system was a masterwork of integration and subtlety. The builders worked primarily with the most abundant and durable local material, granite. They crafted massive stone slabs and meticulously shaped them to create channels and conduits that snaked across the land. The true brilliance lies in the joining of these slabs. Rather than relying on mortar, which would crack and crumble in the tropical heat and torrential rains, the engineers employed a system of interlocking joints. Each granite slab was precisely cut with grooves and tongues that fit perfectly into its neighbor, creating a seal that was both strong and flexible. This allowed the entire network to expand and contract with the day's heat and settle during minor Earth movements without breaking apart. It was a modular system where a damaged section could be identified and replaced without dismantling long stretches of the channel, a design philosophy that prioritized long-term maintainability above all else. This approach was perfectly tailored to the region's defining feature, water variability. The climate is defined by long, parched dry seasons followed by intense, overwhelming monsoon rains. The system wasn't just built to convey a steady flow, it was engineered to survive and manage extremes. This is most evident in the sophisticated overflow and diversion mechanisms built into the design. At strategic points, the channels feature cleverly placed spillways and bypass channels. During a typical downpour, These would automatically divert excess water away from the main agricultural and urban channels, safely routing the surplus into large, carved-out reservoir tanks or back into the natural river system. This prevented a destructive surge of water from scouring out the carefully laid granite channels and undermining their foundations. They weren't fighting the monsoon, they were respectfully collaborating with it, using its immense power to their advantage by capturing what they needed and safely bypassing the rest. The legacy of this foresight is visible to any visitor to Hampi today. While the magnificent palaces stand as silent stone skeletons, the water system never fully died. During the annual rains, you can witness a miraculous resurrection as these ancient channels once again fill with water, channeling the life-giving monsoon through the ruins and into the fields of local farmers who still cultivate the same land. The granite conduits, though worn smooth by time, show remarkably little erosion or damage from vegetation. The tight, interlocking joints left few crevices for seeds to take root, and the sheer weight and slope of the slabs discouraged the kind of soil buildup that would allow trees to disrupt them. They endure not as cold, dead monuments, but as a living, breathing part of the landscape's seasonal rhythm. The Aqueduct of Hampi teaches us a profound lesson about context-specific durability. Timeproof design here wasn't about creating a single, monumental structure to impress, but about weaving a resilient, adaptable, and decentralized network into the very fabric of the environment. The Vijayanagara engineers understood that in a tropical climate, the greatest threat wasn't necessarily a lack of water, but its violent and unpredictable abundance. Their solution was a system that could be both a delicate instrument of distribution and a robust shield against torrential force. This graceful dance with nature's extremes, written in interlocking granite and intelligent overflow, showcases a level of hydraulic wisdom that feels remarkably urgent as our modern world grapples with its own increasingly volatile climate patterns. Nestled within the sun-baked plains of Portugal's Alentejo region, the ancient city of Evora holds a remarkable secret to urban resilience, one that has been flowing quietly for nearly 2,000 years. The Aqueduct of Evora, known locally as the Aqueducto da Agua de Prata, presents a fascinating study in Roman adaptability. Unlike the monumental arcades that stride across valleys, this aqueduct is a hybrid creature, a master of disguise that transitions seamlessly from a hidden, subterranean channel to a dramatic above-ground arcade as it enters the city walls. This clever design was a direct response to both geography and strategy. For most of its 18-kilometer journey from the nearby Diva River, the water traveled safely underground, protected from evaporation under the hot Iberian sun and secure from potential enemy attack. It was only upon reaching the city's edge that it emerged onto a graceful series of arches, a triumphant architectural statement announcing the arrival of civilization's most precious resource right into the heart of the community. The longevity of this structure is a direct result of its robust yet simple construction. The Romans, demonstrating their keen understanding of local materials, built it primarily from the region's abundant granite. This stone is not only immensely strong but also possesses a granular structure that makes it highly resistant to the abrasive forces of wind and rain. And true to the most enduring Roman principles, the entire above-ground section was assembled without a single drop of mortar. The massive blocks were painstakingly shaped to fit together with such precision that they are held in place solely by gravity and friction. This construction method is the key to its seismic resilience. When the ground shakes, a not uncommon occurrence in this part of the world, the entire structure can sway and settle minutely. A rigid, mortared construction would crack under such stress, but Evora's aqueduct simply shifts. its stones adjusting their positions like a well-choreographed dance before settling back into a state of perfect equilibrium once the tremors have passed. This inherent durability was matched by a centuries-long tradition of communal care that truly cemented its time-proof status. After the fall of Rome, the aqueduct was never truly forgotten or abandoned by the people of Evora. They recognized its immense value, and through the medieval, Renaissance, and into the modern era, they undertook periodic repairs and renovations. This was not a project mandated by a distant emperor, but a labor of local pride and necessity. The most significant restoration came in the 16th century under King Joao III, who not only repaired the structure but also expanded its reach, ensuring it continued to serve the growing city. This ongoing engagement transformed the aqueduct from a piece of infrastructure into a beloved civic heirloom, a symbol of the city's identity and its enduring ability to provide for its own. This deep-seated connection is powerfully evident today. While modern plumbing systems long ago took over the primary role of water delivery, the aqueduct has never been fully retired. Its channels remain clear, and during periods of peak demand or drought, it has been quietly called back into service to supplement the municipal supply, a silent and reliable partner to 21st century technology. More than that, it has been completely woven into the fabric of daily life in a way few ancient structures are. Houses and shops have been built right into and between its massive arches, creating a unique architectural tapestry where the past doesn't just support the present, it lives within it. This intimate relationship between a community and its ancient water source offers a profound lesson. It shows that the most effective preservation strategy is not just about expert restoration crews, but about fostering a sense of shared ownership and continuous value. A structure is most likely to endure when the people who live around it cannot imagine their landscape without it. Now we travel to the shores of the Mediterranean, where an aqueduct faced an adversary that none of our previous examples encountered so directly: the relentless, corrosive power of the sea itself. The Aqueduct of Caesarea, commissioned by King Herod the Great in the 1st century before Christ, was an integral part of one of the ancient world's most ambitious building projects. Herod wasn't just constructing a water system, he was creating a magnificent port city from scratch, a grand Hellenistic-style capital intended to rival Alexandria and proclaim his power and sophistication to the Roman world. But to sustain a bustling metropolis on a coastal plain with no natural rivers or springs, he needed to perform a hydrological miracle, bringing fresh water from distant sources across arid landscape right to the edge of the salty sea. The engineering solution was a masterful 30-mile-long system that combined the best of Roman hydraulic knowledge with adaptations for a uniquely challenging environment. It drew water from the plentiful springs at the base of Mount Carmel near today's Haifa and channeled it south to Caesarea. For much of its journey, the water flowed through a buried, waterproof channel to protect it from evaporation under the harsh sun. But as it approached the coast and encountered low-lying, sandy ground, the system transitioned to a raised arcade of sturdy stone arches, necessary to maintain the crucial, gentle gradient all the way to the city's reservoirs and ornate fountains. This dual approach, subterranean for efficiency and elevated for topography, showcased a flexible and highly practical application of engineering principles. The true test of its time-proof design, however, came from its location. Most aqueducts contend with rain, frost, and earth movements. The Caesarea aqueduct had to withstand the constant, insidious assault of the marine environment, salt-laden air that accelerates corrosion, the abrasive force of wind-blown sand, and the direct impact of storm-driven waves and spray. The Roman engineers' response to this was nothing short of revolutionary. For the critical sections closest to the shore, they employed a specialized type of hydraulic concrete, a material that represented the cutting edge of ancient technology. This wasn't the simple lime mortar used elsewhere. It was a sophisticated mixture that incorporated volcanic ash known as pozzolana and carefully selected aggregates. When this Roman concrete mix was combined with seawater during construction, a fascinating chemical reaction occurred, creating rare crystalline minerals like altobermorite within the matrix. This process resulted in a concrete that was not just resistant to saltwater, it was actually strengthened by it, unlike modern Portland cement, which can weaken and crumble after decades of exposure to seawater. The Roman formulation grew more resilient over time, forming a rock-like mass that could endure the endless pounding of the waves. This incredible durability is why, 2,000 years later, you can still see massive blocks of this concrete sitting in the surf, their surfaces pitted and worn by the elements, but their core structural integrity stubbornly intact. Beyond this ingenious material choice, the aqueduct's longevity is also a testament to its meticulous hydraulic design. The gradient was calculated with exceptional precision to maintain a flow that was fast enough to prevent the fine, ubiquitous coastal sand from settling and silting up the channel, yet slow enough to avoid any scouring erosion that would have damaged the conduit lining over centuries. This balance was essential in an environment where sand infiltration was a constant threat to the system's operation. Even after the city of Caesarea was abandoned following the Muslim conquest in the 7th century, and the aqueduct fell into disuse, its core design refused to yield completely. While sections were eventually quarried for stone or damaged by sea storms, long stretches of the arched arcade have survived, standing as a silent, dignified ruin against the modern coastline. Today, the aqueduct has been partially restored and is a central feature of Caesarea's National Park, a powerful educational monument to ancient ingenuity. Its enduring presence offers a critical lesson for our modern era, as rising sea levels and intensifying coastal storms threaten infrastructure worldwide. The aqueduct of Caesarea screams that building in climate-vulnerable zones cannot rely on standard materials and methods. It demands a specialized, hyper-localized approach that anticipates and embraces the specific challenges of the environment. The Romans didn't see the sea as an obstacle to be overcome with brute force, but as a unique design parameter that required its own innovative solutions. In an age of concrete degradation and escalating climate costs, this 2,000-year-old structure points toward a more resilient future, one built on the principle of working with the elements, not against them. High in the thin air of the Peruvian Andes, where the mountains seemed to touch the sky, the Inca Empire faced a challenge that would daunt even modern engineers: how to farm on near-vertical slopes in an environment of punishing frost, violent rains, and constant seismic threat. Their solution, embodied in the aqueduct of Chinchero, was not to conquer this landscape, but to engage in a respectful dialogue with it, creating a water system that was so perfectly adapted to its home that it continues to function as a silent partner to the mountain itself. Built in the 15th century as a vital artery of the vast Inca road network, this aqueduct was not a standalone marvel, but an integrated component of a grand agricultural and administrative complex. Its purpose was precise and vital: to capture the pure, cold water from high-altitude springs and deliver it to the breathtakingly steep terraced farms that clung to the mountainsides, ensuring the survival of a population in one of the world's most demanding environments. The construction philosophy here stands in stark contrast to the monumental arcades of Rome. This was hydro-engineering as topographical acupuncture, a subtle and precise intervention into the natural flow of the land. The Incas did not build towering arches to defy gravity across a valley. Instead, they used the mountain's own contours as their guide. They carved channels directly into the living rock or constructed low-lying, stone-lined conduits that followed the natural fall lines of the terrain with an almost intuitive understanding of hydrology. The channels were narrow and deep, a design that minimized water's exposure to the fierce Andean sun and wind, drastically reducing evaporation, a critical consideration when every drop was precious. The stones were fitted together with that characteristically perfect, mortar-less Inca precision, creating a seamless flow that was both strong and flexible, able to shift and settle during the frequent earth tremors that ripple through the region without fracturing. This profound alignment with the mountain's natural rhythms is the primary secret to its astonishing resilience. The aqueduct's path was meticulously chosen to avoid areas prone to landslides, following stable ridgelines and bedrock shelves. When it did need to cross a particularly unstable section, the Incas employed their genius for adaptive foundation work, building sturdy, graduated stone retaining walls that stabilized the ground beneath the channel, effectively becoming a part of the mountain's own structure. This is why, after centuries of abandonment following the Spanish conquest in the 16th century, the aqueduct of Chinchero did not simply collapse and vanish. Without maintenance, it was eventually silted up and overshadowed by vegetation for much of the year. But with the arrival of each rainy season, a quiet miracle occurs. The increased water pressure from the swollen springs clears the debris from the ancient channels, and the mountain's water once again begins to flow along its original, intended path, irrigating the same ancient terraces that local farmers still use today. Its ability to withstand the extreme Andean freeze-thaw cycles is another masterstroke of time-proof design. The Incas understood that water expanding as it freezes is one of the most destructive forces in nature, capable of splitting solid rock. Their solution was elegant in its simplicity. By keeping the water in a constant, gentle motion through the precisely calculated gradient, they made it significantly harder for it to freeze solid. Furthermore, the stone channels themselves, absorbing heat from the sun during the day and releasing it slowly through the frigid night, acted as a thermal buffer, protecting the flowing water within. This passive thermal regulation system, built from nothing but shaped stone and an understanding of physics, has allowed the aqueduct to shrug off thousands of harsh winters without suffering the structural damage that would cripple a less thoughtfully designed system. The enduring legacy of the Chinchero Aqueduct is a powerful testament to a philosophy that seems more urgent today than ever: the principle of working with nature, not against it. The Inca engineers did not see the mountain as an obstacle to be overcome with brute force and imported materials. They saw it as a partner, a teacher. They used its own stone, followed its own contours, and harnessed its own water, creating a system that was inherently sustainable and resilient because it was, in every sense, an extension of the natural world. This deep ecological intelligence, this respectful collaboration with the environment, resulted in an infrastructure that requires no external power, no complex machinery, and no modern maintenance to perform its ancient duty. It is a timeless lesson in humility and wisdom, carved into the slopes of the Andes, reminding us that the most enduring designs are those that listen to the land and flow with its immutable rules. Perched high atop its granite hill, the ancient city of Toledo presents a formidable silhouette against the Spanish sky, a maze of narrow streets, historic churches, and formidable walls that have witnessed centuries of tumultuous history. Supplying water to such an elevated, fortified city was always an epic challenge, one that was finally met in the 16th century not by the Romans, but by a later generation of Spanish engineers. The Aqueduct of San Ildefonso, often overshadowed by the city's more famous cathedral, is a stunning example of how the principles of time-proof design were adapted and reinvented during the Renaissance. Unlike the massive imperial projects of ancient Rome, this was a more targeted endeavor commissioned by Cardinal Juan Tavera to solve a very specific problem, delivering a reliable water supply to the imposing Alcazar fortress, the city's highest point and a symbol of royal and military power. The engineering solution they arrived with was a masterful blend of old and new wisdom. The aqueduct's most striking feature is its elegant two-tiered arcade, a design that immediately speaks to a different aesthetic and structural philosophy than its Roman predecessors. The lower tier is a robust series of broad, sturdy arches built from the local granite, providing a rock-solid foundation capable of bearing immense weight. The upper tier, however, showcases the growing influence of new materials and techniques. It is constructed primarily from brick, a lighter and more flexible material that was becoming increasingly popular. This hybrid approach was a stroke of genius. The heavy stone base provided unparalleled stability and anchored the entire structure firmly to the difficult, sloping terrain. The lighter brick arches above reduced the overall load on that foundation, a crucial consideration for preventing subsidence over centuries. Furthermore, brick offers superior resistance to the thermal expansion and contraction caused by the region's extreme temperature swings, reducing the long-term stress on the mortar joints. This thoughtful combination of materials contributed directly to the aqueduct's incredible resilience through a history marked by violence and neglect. Toledo was a fiercely contested city, and the Alcazar it served was the site of a famous and brutal siege during the Spanish Civil War in the 1930s, where the fortress was nearly completely destroyed by shelling and fire. Yet, the aqueduct that supplied it emerged from the conflict scarred but fundamentally intact, its sturdy proportions and balanced load distribution allowing it to absorb the concussive forces of modern warfare that leveled buildings around it. Its survival is a powerful testament to the idea that robust, balanced design can create structures that are resilient to threats the original builders could never have even imagined. Long after it was officially retired in the 19th century, replaced by modern pumping systems, the Aqueduct of San Ildefonso found a new, poetic purpose that ensures its continued care and relevance. While it no longer carries the drinking water for a fortress, it has been gracefully integrated into the city's modern landscape as a beautiful decorative feature. During festivals and special occasions, water is once again sent flowing along its ancient channel, cascading from fountains incorporated into its base, transforming the functional relic into a dynamic public spectacle. This transition from critical infrastructure to cherished civic ornament is a profound chapter in its time-proof story. It is no longer maintained out of sheer necessity, but out of a deep-seated love and pride. The city invests in its preservation because it has become an inseparable part of Toledo's visual identity and cultural heritage, a beloved landmark that residents and visitors alike cannot imagine the city without. The enduring legacy of the Toledo Aqueduct beautifully illustrates a dimension of time-proof design that goes beyond mere structural calculation, the power of artistry to ensure longevity. Its architects understood that a structure that is beautiful, that uplifts the human spirit and enhances its surroundings, is far more likely to be valued, preserved, and cared for by future generations. They built something that was not only useful but also magnificent, knowing that this aesthetic appeal would forge an emotional connection with the community it served. This connection has guaranteed its survival long after its original utility faded. It stands as a powerful argument that the most enduring creations are those that successfully marry the pragmatic with the poetic, serving the needs of the body and the soul in equal measure, ensuring they are never viewed as disposable but always treasured as heirlooms for the ages. Leaving behind the medieval fortifications of Toledo, our exploration now brings us to a more recent and perhaps surprising chapter in the story of hydraulic endurance. In the lush, walled city of Lucca, Italy, an aqueduct stands as a beautiful anachronism, a 19th-century structure that consciously looked backward to ancient principles to solve a modern problem. The Aqueduct of Lucca is a fascinating hybrid, a testament to the enduring appeal of Roman ingenuity even at the dawn of the industrial age. Constructed between the years 1823 and 1851 under the direction of Lorenzo Nautolini, this was not a project born from imperial ambition, but from a growing civic desire for a cleaner, more reliable public water supply to combat the epidemics that plagued the rapidly growing urban population. Its creation marks a pivotal moment where engineering history began to consciously repeat itself. What makes the Lucca Aqueduct so remarkable is its deliberate architectural nostalgia. At first glance, its sweeping arcade of 459 neoclassical arches, stretching for over 3 kilometers, could easily be mistaken for a lost Roman relic. Nautolini, an architect deeply influenced by the archaeological discoveries at Pompeii and Herculaneum, made a conscious aesthetic choice to cloak this modern utility in the dignified robes of antiquity. But this was far more than just a stylistic flourish. By adopting the Roman archer form perfected over millennia for distributing massive compressive loads, Nautolini was harnessing a proven, time-proof structural principle. The arches are not mere decoration. They are the fundamental, load-bearing engine of the entire system, chosen for their inherent stability and resilience, qualities that had been demonstrated unequivocally by structures like the Pont du Gard. Yet, for all its classical inspiration, the Aqueduct of Lucca was very much a product of its time, benefiting from advancements that its ancient predecessors could never have accessed. The quality of the materials used was exceptional. The bricks were uniformly fired to a high standard, and the mortar was mixed to a more consistent and durable recipe than was possible in Roman times. Perhaps the most significant modern touch was the use of a pressurized lead pipe, hidden from view within the hollow top of the arcade, to carry the water. This innovation allowed the system to navigate subtle changes in elevation with greater flexibility than a simple open stone channel, reducing the risk of leaks and blockages. This marriage of ancient form and modern material science created a system that was both beautifully traditional and functionally superior. The true secret to this aqueduct's enduring structural integrity, however, lies not just in its design but in its history of care. Unlike many ancient aqueducts that were abandoned for centuries, the Lucca system was in continuous, documented use for over 100 years, right up until the 1968. This long period of active service meant it was never subjected to the long, corrosive sleep of neglect. It was maintained, repaired, and upgraded by generations of city workers who understood its value. This continuous stewardship is a crucial, often overlooked ingredient in the recipe for longevity. It demonstrates that timeproofing is not a one-time achievement but an ongoing process, a covenant between a structure and the community it serves to ensure it is never allowed to fall into disrepair. The Aqueduct of Lucca stands as a powerful and elegant bridge across the centuries. It proves that the principles of timeproof design are not locked in the distant past but are a living, applicable wisdom. It shows that we can look to the ancient world not for mere imitation, but for inspiration, adapting their core philosophies, the use of durable, local materials, the mastery of passive forces like gravity, and the creation of inherently stable forms with the enhanced tools and knowledge of our own era. This structure whispers a compelling question to modern engineers and city planners. If a 19th century architect with one foot in the past could build something this durable, what could we achieve today if we fully committed to building for the next 1,000 years? Shifting our gaze to Spain's southeastern coast, we arrive at a port city where the legacy of empire, the demands of war, and the relentless assault of the sea have combined to create a fascinating story of layered resilience. The Aqueduct of Cartagena is a palimpsest of engineering history, a structure whose very fabric tells a tale of destruction, rebirth, and stubborn adaptation. Its origins are rooted in the Roman era when the city, then known as Carthago Nova, was a vital strategic and mining center. The Romans, masters of utilitarian infrastructure, undoubtedly built an aqueduct to serve the population, though little of that original structure remains visible today. The aqueduct we see now is largely an 18th century rebirth, a phoenix risen from the rubble of neglect and conflict, born from the urgent necessity of the Spanish crown to maintain its most important Mediterranean naval base. The driving force behind its reconstruction was not civic pride but national security. Cartagena's harbor was the home of the Spanish Mediterranean fleet, a concentration of immense military and economic power that required a guaranteed supply of fresh water for thousands of sailors, soldiers, and shipyard workers. Without it, the entire strategic value of the base was compromised. The new design, while inspired by Roman principles, was a product of its time, employing a hybrid construction method that speaks volumes about evolving engineering knowledge. The massive, load-bearing piers and the lower sections of the arches were built from the same kind of sturdy, local sandstone the Romans might have used, providing immense compressive strength and a solid foundation. But for the upper arches and the delicate conduit itself, the builders turned to brick, a material that offered superior advantages in this specific, challenging environment. This choice of brick was a masterstroke of material science. On a wind-swept coastline, the constant, salt-laden air is a silent assassin for stone masonry. The microscopic salt crystals are carried on the humid breeze, penetrating the porous surface of sandstone where they crystallize, slowly but relentlessly prying the stone apart from the inside in a process known as salt weathering. Brick, especially the high-fired variety used here, is far less porous and thus dramatically more resistant to this insidious form of decay. Furthermore, brick is lighter and more flexible than stone. In a region with noticeable seismic activity, this flexibility allowed the entire arcade to sway and absorb energy during earth tremors, preventing the kind of catastrophic brittle failure that could topple a more rigid structure. The aqueduct was, in effect, wearing armor specifically designed to defeat its two greatest enemies, the corrosive sea air and the shifting earth. Yet, even the most brilliant design can be undone by apathy. The aqueduct's survival into the 21st century is as much a story of community value as it is of engineering. For the people of Cartagena, this was not merely a water pipe. It was a lifeline to their economic survival and a symbol of their city's strategic importance to the nation. This deep-seated recognition fostered a powerful tradition of preservation. Throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, even as modern plumbing made the aqueduct obsolete for its primary purpose, the city never turned its back on the structure. It was maintained, repaired, and protected from the urban development that threatened to encroach upon it. It became a beloved landmark, a visual shorthand for the city's long and layered history, its image reproduced on postcards and in travel guides, ensuring its status was elevated from utility to icon. This communal guardianship has yielded a remarkable result. The aqueduct is not a completely dormant relic. While it no longer serves as the primary water source for the naval base, sections of it have been preserved in a state of semi-functionality. During certain times of the year or for special cultural events, water is sometimes allowed to flow through its ancient channels, a living demonstration of its original purpose and a powerful, flowing connection to the past. This occasional reactivation is the ultimate validation of its time-proof design. It stands as a physical bridge between its Roman inspiration, its 18th century reconstruction, and its modern role as a cultural treasure. The Aqueduct of Cartagena teaches us that resilience is rarely a single, brilliant act of creation. More often, it is a cumulative process, a story written in layers of stone and brick and community care, where each generation recognizes the value of what was built before and makes the conscious choice to add its own layer of preservation, ensuring that the flow of history, like the water itself, is never completely interrupted. Deep in the sun-drenched region of Extremadura in western Spain lies Mérida, a city that was once among the most important outposts of the entire Roman Empire. Known then as Augusta Emerita, it was a retirement city for veteran legionaries, a place meant to project Roman power and comfort in a distant province. And at the heart of this ambitious urban project was one of the most sophisticated and extensive public water systems ever constructed by Roman hands. The Aqueduct of Mérida, specifically the towering arcade known today as Los Milagros, the Miracles, is not merely a single structure but the most visible part of a vast hydrological network that included dams, underground channels, and distribution tanks. Its purpose was to deliver a symbol of civilization itself, fresh, flowing water, to a city designed to awe both its inhabitants and the local population. The survival of this aqueduct through centuries of abandonment, war, and the slow creep of nature is a masterclass in the principle of material harmony. The Roman engineers, in their profound wisdom, did not import fancy or exotic materials to build their masterpiece. Instead, they turned to the very land around them, quarrying massive blocks of local granite for the immense piers and elegant arches, and using a hard, durable schist for the foundational work. This was a critical decision. These local stones were not just abundant, they were already perfectly acclimated to the specific environmental conditions of the region, the intense summer heat, the occasional freezing winter nights, and the particular chemistry of the local rainwater. They had already undergone millions of years of natural weathering in that exact spot. By using them, the Romans ensured that their structure would age not as a foreign element fighting its surroundings, but as a natural part of the landscape, weathering at the same graceful pace as the nearby hillsides. This material choice was married to an almost supernatural level of engineering precision, particularly in the realm of hydraulics. The aqueduct's gradient was calculated with such exacting care that it created a flow of water that was both constant and incredibly gentle. This was not a turbulent rush that would scour and erode the interior of the stone conduit over decades. Instead, it was a smooth, steady glide that minimized wear and tear, a silent, self-preserving system that treated the water within not as a destructive force to be battled, but as a partner to be guided. Furthermore, the Romans demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of maintenance access. At regular intervals along the underground sections of the system, they incorporated well-like vertical shafts known as lumens. These were not an afterthought, they were an integral part of the original design, allowing future generations to easily access the channel to clear blockages of silt or debris, a built-in acknowledgement that even the most perfect design might someday need a helping hand. The aqueduct's subsequent history is a powerful testament to the success of this philosophy. After the fall of Rome, the system was not maintained with the same rigorous discipline, and it eventually fell into a long period of silence and neglect. Yet it did not crumble, it simply waited. Its locally sourced granite blocks continued to weather gracefully. Its perfectly calculated arches continued to distribute their loads efficiently, and its foundational schist remained as stable as the day it was laid. It was so well built that it could withstand centuries of abandonment without catastrophic failure. This incredible resilience is what earned it the local name, Los Milagros. It seemed a miracle that it was still standing at all. Its survival through this long sleep is perhaps an even greater feat of engineering than its original construction. Today, as a UNESCO World Heritage Site and a cornerstone of the archaeological ensemble of Mérida, the aqueduct is recognized as a monument of universal value. But it is more than a static museum piece. In a beautiful fulfillment of its original purpose, the ancient system is occasionally reactivated, with water once again channeled through its time-worn conduits. This is not done out of necessity, but out of reverence and for educational demonstration, a powerful, flowing lesson in Roman engineering. When the water flows, it is the ultimate proof of concept. It demonstrates that time-proof design is not about creating something indestructible, but about creating something in such perfect harmony with its place and purpose that it can slumber for centuries and still be gently awakened to perform its duty once more. The Aqueduct of Mérida stands as a quiet, dignified giant, reminding us that the most enduring creations are those that listen to the land and use its own voice to speak across the millennia. Beneath the bustling modern streets of Istanbul, in the shadow of ancient hippodromes and grand mosques, lies a hidden underground palace that redefines our very notion of an aqueduct. The Basilica Cistern is not a channel for moving water, but a magnificent cathedral built to hold it, a silent, submerged vault that represents the critical next step in the journey of every drop that flowed through the aqueducts of Constantinople. Commissioned by the Byzantine Emperor Justinian in the 6th century, this was the city's largest underground reservoir, designed to store a vast emergency supply of fresh water delivered by the Aqueduct of Valens and other systems, enough to sustain the besieged capital for months. While the aqueducts were the arteries, the cistern was the heart, and its enduring survival reveals that time-proof design is just as much about storage and adaptation as it is about transport. Stepping down into its shadowy, cavernous space is an experience that feels more like entering a sunken temple than a utilitarian tank. The ceiling is a breathtaking series of vaulted brick arches, supported by a forest of 336 marble columns, many salvaged from even older Roman temples and repurposed with pragmatic efficiency. This reuse of materials, known as spolia, was not merely economical, it was structurally brilliant. These columns were made from high-quality marble and granite, materials that had already proven their durability over centuries. By incorporating them, the Byzantine engineers were building upon a foundation of pre-tested, time-proof elements. The true engineering marvel, however, lies in the walls and floor. The entire chamber was designed as a massive, waterproof box. The brick vaults and arches were covered in a special, thick layer of waterproof mortar, and the floor was paved with great terracotta tiles before being sealed with another layer of this hydraulic plaster. This created an impermeable shell that could hold millions of gallons of water without a single drop seeping back into the earth, a testament to a masterful understanding of hydrostatic pressure and material science. The cistern's design showcases a profound understanding of passive environmental control that contributes directly to its longevity. The constant, cool, dark environment of the underground chamber naturally inhibits the growth of algae and bacteria that would otherwise spoil the water and degrade the structure. The sheer mass of the water itself acts as a thermal regulator, maintaining a stable temperature that prevents the damaging freeze-thaw cycles that can crack stone and mortar above ground. Furthermore, the forest of columns does more than just hold up the ceiling. It breaks up the immense pressure of the water, distributing the colossal weight evenly across the entire foundation and preventing any single point of failure. This holistic design created a stable, self-regulating ecosystem for water storage that required virtually no active management to remain intact and functional. But the most compelling chapter in the Cistern story is not just its physical endurance, but its incredible journey of adaptive reuse, a masterclass in how a structure can find new life across wildly different eras. After the Ottoman conquest of Constantinople in 1453, the cistern was largely forgotten by the world above for centuries. The Ottomans preferred flowing water from fountains and had their own storage systems, and the great underground hall fell into obscurity, known only through local rumors and legends of a mysterious underground palace where one could catch fish through holes in basement floors. It was rediscovered in the 16th century, but it wasn't until the 1980s that its true potential was reimagined. Rather than being restored solely as an archaeological site, it was carefully rehabilitated as a public cultural space. Walkways were installed over the shallow, still water that reflects the majestic columns, and subtle, atmospheric lighting was added to highlight its eerie beauty. This transformation from a neglected water tank into one of Istanbul's most iconic and visited tourist attractions is the ultimate expression of its time-proof nature. It is no longer used to store drinking water, but it serves a purpose arguably just as vital for the modern city. It stores wonder, history, and cultural identity. Its adaptive reuse has guaranteed its preservation in a way that simple conservation never could. It now generates revenue and pride, ensuring that it is meticulously maintained, its water level and humidity carefully controlled, and its structure monitored for the slightest sign of distress. This successful transition proves that a structure's durability is not only a product of its original engineering, but also of its ongoing value to the society around it. The Basilica cistern teaches us that the most time-proof designs are those that are inherently adaptable, capable of being reinvented to meet the needs of new generations, ensuring they are never viewed as obsolete relics, but as living, valuable assets whose story is still being written. Leaving behind the stone and brick monuments of the Mediterranean, our journey now takes a profound turn, transporting us to the heart of China's agricultural north to discover an aqueduct that completely redefines our understanding of permanence. In the arid landscapes of Shaanxi province, the ancient aqueduct of Pinglu presents a paradox. Dating back over 1,000 years to the illustrious Tang dynasty, this system seems to break all the rules we've established so far. For while the Romans and Incas built for the ages in stone, the Pinglu aqueduct was constructed from a material we consider fragile and transient, wood. This was not a monumental arcade meant to awe, but a pragmatic, graceful network of wooden troughs and channels, supported by simple stone piers, designed to perform one essential task: to capture the unpredictable, violent floodwaters of the nearby Yellow River basin and divert them to nourish the thirsty fields of the lowest plateau. The choice of wood over stone here was not a compromise or a sign of lesser engineering capability. It was a stroke of pure genius, a perfect adaptation to a specific and volatile environment. The lowest plateau is made of a fine, wind-blown silt that is incredibly fertile but also notoriously fragile and prone to catastrophic landslides. Building a heavy, monumental stone aqueduct on this shifting, unstable ground would have been an exercise in futility, as the very earth beneath its foundations could slump away in a single season of heavy rain. The Pinglu engineers understood this intimately. Their solution was a system that was light, flexible, and, most importantly, renewable. The wooden troughs, often carved from single, massive logs or pieced together with sophisticated joinery, were strong enough to handle the torrential rush of seasonal floodwaters, yet light enough that their stone support piers could be modest and widely spaced, exerting minimal pressure on the vulnerable ground below. This embrace of a perishable material is the aqueduct's most revolutionary secret. The designers of Pinglu understood that trying to fight the destructive power of the annual floods with rigid, permanent stone was a battle they would eventually lose. Instead, they chose to collaborate with the river's cycle of destruction and renewal. They knew that sections of the wooden trough would be damaged or swept away almost every year. But this was not a failure of the design, it was its core principle. The system was built to be repaired, not just to endure. The wood was locally sourced, easy to replace, and required skills possessed by any local village carpenter. When a section was destroyed, the community would simply gather, fashion a new wooden channel, and hoist it back onto the waiting stone supports. This created a beautiful, ongoing relationship between the structure and the people it served, a cycle of use, damage, and repair that wove the aqueduct into the very cultural and agricultural rhythm of the region. It was a living, breathing piece of infrastructure, not a static monument. This philosophy challenges our deepest assumptions about what makes a design time-proof. We often equate longevity with invulnerability, with structures that stand unchanged for millennia. The Aqueduct of Pinglu proposes a radically different idea, that time-proofness can be dynamic. Its resilience lies not in its ability to resist change, but in its capacity to adapt to it, to be reborn again and again through a cycle of renewal that is built into its very DNA. It is durable because it is renewable. This is a lesson in sustainable design that feels astonishingly modern. In an era where we grapple with the concept of circular economies and regenerative systems, this 1,000-year-old Chinese aqueduct stands as a quiet master, demonstrating that the most sustainable system is not necessarily the one that never breaks, but the one that can be most easily and effectively fixed with local materials and local knowledge. The ultimate proof of this concept is written on the landscape today. While the aqueduct was largely abandoned as a primary irrigation system in the modern era, its story did not end. During the annual summer floods, when the rivers swell with monsoon rains, a silent miracle of hydraulic memory occurs. The original stone support piers, their foundations cleverly sited on the most stable outcrops of bedrock, remain stubbornly in place. As the floodwaters surge through the ancient network of canals and channels, they often find their way back into the original course, guided by these enduring stone markers. Local farmers observing this will sometimes place temporary wooden or even modern plastic channels across the ancient piers, spontaneously reactivating fragments of the system to capture the precious floodwater for their fields. This is time-proof design in its most organic, dynamic form, a structure that is not so much abandoned as it is dormant, waiting to be awakened by the needs of the people and the rhythm of the water, a timeless partnership between human ingenuity and the enduring flow of nature. Moving from the ancient dynasties of China to the dawn of the modern industrial era, we find an aqueduct that embodies a completely different philosophy of endurance, one not of static perfection, but of constant, purposeful evolution. The New River, despite its deceptively simple name, is not a river at all, but one of England's most ambitious and long-lived civil engineering projects, a testament to the idea that time-proofing can be a process of adaptation rather than a single act of immortal construction. Conceived in the early 17th century by the visionary entrepreneur Hugh Middleton, its goal was audacious: to solve London's chronic and lethal water shortages by channeling fresh spring water from the chalky hills of Hertfordshire, over 40 kilometers away, into the heart of the expanding and increasingly polluted metropolis. This was not an imperial project funded by a vast treasury, but a private venture, a gamble that required immense capital, political maneuvering, and groundbreaking engineering to become a reality. The original construction, completed in 1613, was a marvel of its age, but it was far from the monumental stone arcade we might imagine. For most of its length, it was a carefully engineered channel, or leat, that followed the natural contours of the land with a gravity-fed gradient more subtle than even the Romans typically attempted. It was a work of earthworks and careful digging, of diverting streams and tunneling through hillsides. Its most iconic features, the elegant brick arches that carry it across valleys, were actually later additions, built over decades and centuries as the city expanded, and the need to preserve the water's purity and gradient became more pressing. This incremental approach is the new river's first great secret to longevity. It was not built as a finished, perfect monument, but as a living, growing system that could be improved, expanded, and upgraded as technology and needs evolved. It was designed for change from its very inception. This philosophy of gradual, intelligent upgrade is what truly defines its time-proof nature. Over its 400-year history, the New River has never been a static relic. It has been constantly reinvented. In the 18th century, sections of the open earth channel were lined with brick and later with concrete to reduce seepage and contamination. In the 19th century, as steam power revolutionized industry, massive pumping stations were built to supplement the gravitational flow and increase the volume of water delivered. The original wooden pipes that distributed water in London were replaced with cast iron and later with steel. The system absorbed these changes not as violations of its original design, but as natural progressions. It became a hybrid entity, part ancient gravity-fed channel, part modern pumped utility, each generation adding a new layer of technology onto the sturdy foundation laid by the past. This stands in stark contrast to so many ancient aqueducts that were abandoned when they could no longer be maintained as they were originally built. The New River was simply maintained by being continuously rebuilt. Perhaps its most brilliant feature, and the key to its enduring functionality, is its deep integration with the natural waterways it traverses. Unlike a system that fights against the landscape, the New River works with it. It was designed to incorporate existing springs and streams along its route, effectively weaving itself into the natural hydrology of the region. This symbiotic relationship meant that during periods of high rainfall, the natural waterways would replenish it, and during droughts, its carefully managed flow could be sustained. This integration also provided a built-in resilience. If a section was damaged, water could often be temporarily rerouted through natural courses while repairs were made. The system wasn't an isolated, artificial lifeline. It was a managed and enhanced part of the environment itself, a partnership between human engineering and natural water cycles that proved incredibly robust and sustainable. The New River's operational life only ended in the 1990s, but even in so-called retirement, its evolutionary journey continues. It was never truly abandoned. Large sections are meticulously maintained by the Thames Water Utility Company, not as a primary water source, but as a priceless emergency backup. In an era of climate uncertainty, where drought and infrastructure failure are real threats, this centuries-old system remains on standby, capable of delivering millions of liters of water should modern systems ever fail. Other stretches have been transformed into a beautiful linear park and walking trail, a cherished green corridor that winds through North London, offering tranquility and a living history lesson to millions of residents. This graceful transition from critical infrastructure to public amenity and emergency safeguard is the ultimate validation of its adaptable, evolutionary design. The new river teaches us that the most resilient systems are not those that are built to remain forever unchanged, but those that are designed from the outset to learn, to grow, and to find new purpose in a changing world, proving that timeproofness is not a state of being, but a capacity for continuous becoming. Our final stop on this global journey brings us back to the Spanish Sun, to the outskirts of Mérida, where a quieter, more humble aqueduct offers perhaps the most distilled and powerful summary of all the principles we've explored. The Aqueduct of San Lazaro doesn't strive for the breathtaking height of Segovia or the sprawling complexity of the Aqua Augusta. Instead, it stands as a masterclass in minimalist efficiency, a testament to the Roman genius for doing exactly what is necessary with a flawless economy of effort and material. Built to channel water from a nearby reservoir into the bustling heart of Augusta Emerita, its purpose was purely utilitarian, a workhorse rather than a showpiece, and it is in this unassuming functionality that its most profound lessons are hidden. The design is breathtakingly straightforward, a series of robust, perfectly proportioned granite arches striding across the gentle Spanish landscape. There are no decorative flourishes, no unnecessary tiers, no attempts to impress with scale. Every element has been pared down to its essential function. The arches are precisely calculated to bear the weight of the water channel above and transfer it directly down through the sturdy piers into the ground. This minimalist approach is its first great strength. With fewer components and no redundant elements, there are simply fewer things that can go wrong over the centuries. The structure possesses an inherent stability and clarity of form that complex designs often sacrifice. It is a lesson in engineering elegance, proving that the most reliable solution is frequently the simplest one, a principle that modern designers often overlook in the pursuit of novelty. This simplicity is powerfully complemented by an almost obsessive attention to material selection and foundation work. The aqueduct was constructed primarily from local granite, a stone chosen not for its beauty, though it weathers magnificently, but for its incredible density and resistance to abrasion. The Roman engineers understood that the stone under their feet, shaped by millennia of local climatic conditions, was already pre-hardened to survive in that exact environment. But the true secret to its endurance lies beneath the surface. The foundations for the piers were not merely dug, they were excavated down to the most stable stratum of the subsoil, and then built up with layers of packed rubble and mortar, creating a wide, stable platform that would resist settling and the insidious undermining of groundwater. This unseen, meticulous work below ground is what has allowed the visible structure above to stand for 2 millennia, a powerful reminder that true resilience is often built from the bottom up, on a foundation of patient, unglamorous preparation. For centuries after the fall of Rome, the Aqueduct of San Lazaro, like so many of its peers, was left to the mercy of the elements and the slow creep of vegetation. Yet it never fell. Its minimalist form offered little purchase for destructive climbing plants, and its robust foundations refused to be shaken by floods or minor earth tremors. It simply persisted, a silent and stoic monument to its own impeccable design, and in a beautiful coda to its story, it was never fully divorced from human use. Even today, local farmers, recognizing the enduring soundness of the Roman work, will occasionally redirect water through its channels during dry seasons to irrigate the surrounding fields. This occasional, practical use is the ultimate validation of its time-proof nature. It is not a relic frozen in a museum case. It is a tool that remains on the workbench, ready to be picked up and used again whenever the need arises. its functionality preserved not through active conservation, but through the passive genius of its original construction. Standing before the Aqueduct of San Lazaro, one sees the entire philosophy of Roman engineering crystallized into a single, graceful form. It embodies the principle of simplicity, the wisdom of local material choice, the critical importance of foundational integrity, and the elegant harnessing of natural forces. It requires no power, no maintenance, and no complex explanation. It simply works as it has for 2,000 years because its builders understood that to create something truly eternal, you must first understand and respect the immutable rules of the land, the material, and the water itself. In its quiet, enduring presence, it offers a final, silent lesson that the most advanced technology is not always the most complex, but often the most intelligently simple. After traveling across continents and centuries, from the monumental arches of Rome to the hidden waterways of Peru, a powerful pattern emerges from these 24 survivors. They are not just random marvels of luck, they are the physical embodiment of a universal design philosophy, a set of core principles that together form the blueprint for true longevity. The first and perhaps most obvious lesson is the profound wisdom of using local materials. The Roman builders didn't ship exotic marble across the sea for the Pont du Gard. They used the beautiful, honey-colored limestone from quarries just a few miles away. The Incas at Chinchero used the granite of their own mountains, and the Nazca used river stones from their desert washes. This was far more than just a matter of convenience or cost. Local stone, wood, or earth is already perfectly acclimated to its environment. It has spent millennia weathering the specific patterns of sun, wind, frost, and rain unique to that place. By using it, the engineers ensured their structure would age in harmony with the surrounding landscape, rather than as a foreign element fighting a constant, losing battle against the elements. This principle of local provenance drastically reduces the environmental cost of transportation and creates a structure that feels inherently rooted, both geologically and culturally, in its home. But material choice alone is meaningless without a deep understanding of the fundamental forces it must channel and resist, which brings us to the second pillar, gravity-based hydrology. Every single one of these aqueducts is a monument to the power of passive design. They harnessed gravity, the most reliable and constant force on the planet, to move water. There are no pumps, no engines, no moving parts to break down or require fuel. The water flows for free forever, guided by nothing more than a meticulously calculated slope. This gradient was the heart of the entire operation. It had to be steep enough to maintain a flow that prevented silt from clogging the channel, yet gentle enough to avoid a turbulent, erosive torrent that would scour the conduit walls and undermine the foundation over centuries. This precise balance, achieved with simple tools and profound knowledge, created a self-sustaining system. Once completed, it required no external power source, no complex control systems, just the unwavering pull of the Earth itself. In an age of energy scarcity and climate urgency, this lesson in passive, energy-free utility is perhaps the most valuable takeaway of all. However, even the most perfectly designed passive system is not immune to the relentless wear of time and the sudden violence of disaster. This is where the third principle reveals itself, the concept of adaptive maintenance and inherent resilience. The Aqueduct of Valens in Istanbul is the ultimate example. It wasn't just built well once, it was valued so highly by successive civilizations, the Romans, the Byzantines, the Ottomans, that each became its custodian, repairing and upgrading it for over a millennium. This highlights a crucial shift in perspective. These structures were not seen as disposable assets with a planned obsolescence date. They were viewed as permanent civic legacies, and their upkeep was a non-negotiable responsibility. Furthermore, the designs themselves were often inherently resilient. The mortar-less construction of Segovia or the Pont du Gard allowed the structures to sway and settle during earthquakes without shattering. The underground nature of the Nazca Puquios made them immune to surface disasters altogether. This combination of a design that could absorb shock and a culture committed to its care created a powerful feedback loop of longevity. Finally, and perhaps most poetically, these aqueducts teach us the principle of integration over domination. The builders didn't simply impose their will upon the landscape, they engaged in a sophisticated dialogue with it. The Inca aqueduct at Chinchero doesn't march across the Andes on towering arches. It follows the mountain's natural contours like a carefully laid thread. The Nabateans in Petra didn't fight the desert's flash floods. They engineered their entire water system to capture and control that destructive power, turning a threat into a resource. This deep integration minimized the environmental disruption of construction and ensured the structure worked with the natural flows of the land, not against them. They sited their aqueducts along stable bedrock, used the earth itself for insulation and protection, and designed overflow channels that respected the natural water cycle. This respectful collaboration with nature resulted in infrastructure that enhanced the landscape's sustainability rather than degrading it. Together, these four principles — local materials, passive hydrology, adaptive resilience, and natural integration — form a powerful toolkit for the future. As our modern world grapples with crumbling concrete, energy-intensive water systems, and the escalating threats of climate change, these ancient stone sentinels offer a different path forward. They prove that durability and sustainability are not new concepts, but ancient, proven wisdom. They challenge us to shift our mindset from building for a decades-long lifespan to engineering for centuries, to value stewardship over short-term convenience, and to once again learn how to build in harmony with the immutable forces of nature. The water still flowing through these channels is not just water, it is a liquid lesson from the past, and it's urging us to pay attention. From the soaring stone arcs of the Pont du Gard to the hidden spirals of the Nazca Puquios, our journey across 24 forgotten waterways reveals something far more profound than just historical curiosity. It uncovers a universal blueprint for building a legacy, a set of principles that whisper to us across the centuries. These structures stand not as cold, dead ruins, but as living proof that time-proof design is not a mythical ideal, it is an achievable reality, born from simplicity, nurtured by adaptability, and rooted in a deep respect for the natural world. They scream a truth that our modern era, obsessed with complexity and disposability, has largely forgotten: that true durability is rarely found in the most intricate or high-tech solution, but in the most intelligent, holistic, and thoughtful one. It is about planning not for a quarterly report or even a single lifetime, but for generations yet unborn, creating gifts from the past that continue to give into the distant future. The lessons these silent stone teachers offer could not be more urgent. As our world grapples with a deepening climate crisis, crumbling concrete infrastructure, and growing water scarcity, the wisdom flowing through these ancient channels provides a desperately needed alternative path. We don't necessarily need newer, more complex materials or more energy-intensive systems. Perhaps we need to look back to move forward, to rediscover the power of passive gravity, the resilience of local and natural materials, and the elegant simplicity of designs that work with the environment rather than constantly fighting against it. Imagine the sustainability of our cities if we applied these time-proof principles to our own water systems, creating infrastructure that strengthens with age and serves as a heritage for our descendants, rather than a costly burden they must replace. This exploration is more than a history lesson. It is an invitation to shift our entire perspective on what we build and why. These aqueducts challenge us to ask a different set of questions before we break ground on any new project. Not just how much will it cost to build, but how much will it cost our grandchildren to maintain or to tear down? Not, is this the most advanced solution? But, is this the most resilient one? Not, how can we conquer this landscape? But, how can we collaborate with it? This is the true legacy of these magnificent structures. They inspire us to build with legacy in mind, to become better ancestors, and to leave behind markers of our own ingenuity that will inspire awe and gratitude 1,000 years from now. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey across continents and through time. If these stories of enduring stone and flowing water captivated your imagination, please consider subscribing to the channel for more deep dives into the world's greatest historical mysteries. And I would genuinely love to hear from you in the comments below. Which of these 24 aqueducts amazed you the most? Was it the monumental precision of the Romans, the hidden genius of the Nazca, or the adaptive beauty of a hybrid like Padre Tembulk? Share your thoughts and let's keep the conversation flowing. Until next time, keep